Well, we got some massive news, some massive roster changes for the OpTic Texas squad. What's going on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Welcome back to Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We're back here on ranked play once again, slowly getting back into, playing, right? We're back into it, back trying to get some games played and learning the game again, because we took a bit of a break from playing ranked just because we weren't having fun, which is definitely a hint towards what is going to be one of the next Call of Duty videos. But today, we got some massive news. Over the right shoulder, somewhere over there, and over my head there, OpTic Texas made a roster change. And given, yes, they didn't have the best major performance, they still came in first place last stage. And it's kind of questionable of why they did this. So I want to break down kind of context. What happened before this happened? So they started off the year repeating the same roster as they did last year. You had Shotzzy, Pred, Kenny, and Dashy. Same coaches. They were looking to continue the success that they had coming off from winning Call of Duty champs, right? You feel like that's how you do it, right? You win champs, you try to get another one. But as they go into this year, I think after it was like the first or second match or something like that, or the first week, it was announced that Huke would be stepping back and eventually end up getting released from the OpTic Texas squad. Now, if that was officially on paper, I don't know, but at least to the community and to the world and to at least the starting roster for OpTic, Pred was no longer there. So then it was like, okay, who do you bring in? There's lots of free agents, there's lots of options, but of course the answer was Huke. Huke, arguably the best player in Challengers this year, and one of those players that you see is not in the league, and you wonder why is he not in the league? Because he is a good player, and arguably looking at across the league of players that he should be in for, I could think of a few. So Huke was definitely, one of the top, if not, I don't want to say the only option, but one of the best options OpTic could have picked up, right? Huke is an incredible player, and given the right team, right situation, he can be one of the best players in the game, right? He came into OpTic, they finished out 6-1 in their first stage. They looked incredible. Huke had some takeover performances, some great performances, did great in respawn. Every once in a while they had a mistake, but again, he's new to the team. They hadn't been practicing with him a ton. They, as much as you can, after you make a roster change, to try to get incorporated, figure out routes, figure out, roles, figure out what you want to do in certain situations. But there was still a little bit of that, even though it was a few weeks in, but still was, slowly figuring out, every situation, everything, right? That's just time and, practice. But at the same time, it was like, okay, Pred is now a free agent. Huke's looking good. OpTic doing well. Not the best performance in the major, but still looking good, right? Another stage, more practice on their belt. They should be looking like a top team again. But then Pred announced, I guess when he stepped away, that he was dealing with some stuff and that he needed to take some time, get his head right. I don't know if he really said mental issues or what, but said he had some things he needed to take care of. So he went home, took care of whatever he needed to take care of, and then he would be back hopefully after Major 1. Now we're after Major 1, and it was announced yesterday, Pred back in the squad, which is great, right? We like Pred, right? We like his passion, we like his energy. Obviously, he's a great player. But at the same time, you were doing so well with Huke, and not that you weren't with Pred, but at the same time, I hate this move just because how well Huke fits with this team, but at the same time, we like Pred. So it's such a hard situation to deal with, such a hard situation to see from the outside, because I really liked Huke in this squad. I really liked him in there. Not that I didn't like Pred, but I just felt like Huke kind of fit perfectly, and, he fit great in this team. So I really hate to see him go. But, I guess, I don't know if that was the plan all along. That was like, hey, this is going to be temporary. Obviously being on a top team like OpTic, it raises your stock tremendously. And looking across the board, which we'll do in a second, of where Huke could possibly go after this, is another question here. So it sucks, but also it's great because they just won champs together. So once again, the OpTic Texas roster: Shotzzy, Pred, Kenny, Dashy, and then of course Karma and JP Krez as your coaches, which is great. I'm happy for that. I'm hoping they get back after it, get back winning, and get back to that top level we know they can be at. But as far as Huke goes, where does he go? Right, that's the next question here. So let's talk about some possible landing spots for Huke, right? That's the next question is, okay, he played extremely well with a top team. Any team kind of outside the top, I'll say 5. Any of those teams I could see picking Huke up, with a couple of exceptions just given off their team dynamics. So let's start at the bottom with the Vegas Falcons. I don't think there's a chance he goes to the Falcons just simply because they're horrible. But second of all, because they're full, is it Saudi Arabian, if I remember correctly, or wherever they're from, they speak a different language. So I don't see that happening, although any players, upgraded on that team would be an upgrade. So, unlikely that happens. On to the next one would be the LA Gorilla Mates. They're 2-7, are actually not a terrible map count, but 17-21, but 2-7 on that. So they're 11th seed right now, and one of the teams that is kind of surprising that they're doing this bad, right? They came off from being the New York Subliners with swapping out Lins for Hydra, and then it's the same team. So it's like, how is this team so bad when you add in a player like Lins, who actually looked very good? So then you look at what this team could be. So Huke, you'd either have to be Kismet or you'd have to be Lins. And unlikely one of those guys switches to an AR. So what would you want to do? Either you switch up roles, and then if you replace one of Lins or Kismet, you just swap 1-for-1 submachine gun for submachine gun, or you drop like Priesta and then move one of those guys to the flex, or Skies, I guess, whoever is kind of underperforming there. So really hard to say when it either be Kismet or Lins. Do you see that as much of an upgrade? Do you see a role shift there? I don't think that would work. But again, could be an option, right? They could probably always use an upgrade from the 2-7 spot. The next team is Cloud9 New York. They sit currently 3-8 overall, 19-27 map count, 25 CDL points, sitting just 10th place, which is not great. But let's talk about this team, right? So you have Attach kind of as your main AR, you have Sib as your flex, and you have Mac and Kremp as your SMGs. And in this case, Sib has kind of been the one player that really is kind of notable for underperforming this year. And I know he has it in him. He actually looked good at the major, from what I understand. But in order for that to make sense, you'd have to switch up roles once again. Do you want to switch, especially when like 3 submachine guns is kind of becoming slowly the meta? But again, that also could shift. So you still want to have, a decent balance on your team. So do you swap out either Kremp or Mac, or do you drop Sib and then add one of those guys to, sometimes brings out an AR? Being so low in the standings and then having them require so many changes, unlikely that happens, right? I don't know how Attach is doing. I know he's probably getting close to calling it a career just because he's been around forever. But, maybe he still has it. I'm not sure, kind of how he's playing. I haven't really watched, many of their matches. But again, Cloud9 New York's in 10th place right now. Only 45, I think, points out of first place. So you got a good margin to catch up. Obviously, you don't necessarily need to get that far, but at least into the top 8 to get to champs, which still you are 25 points out of. So again, probably needs some kind of change there, but is Huke the right decision there? Because I feel like there's other things you need to address on that team. Next up, we have the Vancouver Surge, formerly the Seattle Surge, currently sitting 9th place overall, 4-6 on their record, 18-25 map count. One of those teams that just hasn't clicked so far, and they actually already made a roster change, dropping Hixie from their team. So the final 3 consist of 04, Abuza, and Nasty. So this could be interesting. Hixie, I believe, was a submachine gun, with, I think it's 04 and Nasty as the ARs, I believe. I could be wrong. But still, they are definitely looking for a player. So whether it's Huke or whether it's anybody else, they're not super far out of the race yet. You know, once we get later in the season, it's after maybe Major 2. Then maybe we start to figure out kind of who our top teams truly are. And I feel like we already have a kind of a gauge on that. But Vancouver Surge, Huke's been there before. Probably one of the, they probably saw that move maybe happening, whether it was going to be Pred or Huke, staying on OpTic or, going back to OpTic. So maybe they thought they could get him, or just 100% they were like, we need to drop Hixie and do something. Whether that's Huke, whether that's Pred, whether that's somebody else, they needed to do something. So Huke's been there before. He's teamed with 04 and Abuza. Nasty recently kind of came back into the fold of being in the Pro League. And apparently 04 has brought out the best in some of these players, which is great. But does Huke want to go back to, the Surge, right? He probably, at this point, knows his stock is high. So he probably wants to try to get into the top 8 and, actually compete for something, have a chance to win. Because that's the reason, I'm almost guaranteeing he's not going to sign with Falcons. He's not going to sign with LA Guerrillas. He's not going to sign with Cloud9 New York. Probably won't sign with Vancouver, but also they have a roster spot open, so I'm not really sure if he'll go there. But there is a few other teams that he could possibly go to. On to our next team is the Boston Breach. This team, 5-5 overall, 21-24 map count, currently sit at 50 CDL points, rounding out our top 8. And Boston's our team that looks good sometimes, but other times they don't. And in this case, they've done well. I think we're 5-2 or something like that in the major. And this team, as soon as they brought Snoopy on, I was like, I get it, right? Bringing a diamond in the rough, young gun, kid that can play very well and hopefully adapt quickly to the Pro League and, be this diamond in the rough star, superstar, future potential superstar player. And in this case, it just hasn't worked. And I'm not just saying it's Snoopy's fault, because also Purge is underwhelming as well, right? He dropped a 0.6 in the opening series versus Atlanta, has done kind of not great, but also I believe he's played the AR role before, so he could switch back to that. But in order to switch back to that, then you have to drop either Cammy or Awakening. So then I think Awakening is the one player I've heard that isn't doing great. I could be wrong with that. So then does Purge slide to an AR? Then you have Snoopy and Huke as a potential sub-duo. I'm not sure, right? Like I said, top 8 right now, but does Huke want to go there? I'm not sure. Our next team, the Minnesota Rocker, currently sit 6-7, 29-31 map count, 60 CDL points, good enough for 7th right now in the league. Estriel, Geo, Nero, and Paul X. This team has been just one of those teams, battling with some teams, game 5s like crazy, and it hasn't been awful, but it hasn't been good. They've kind of just been good enough to win a match or two in a tournament, but for the most part, can't get to that final, we're a decent team, right? So could he go there? Let's see what they could do, right? So Estriel, I believe, was an AR for this team before, at least, I think he was on, LAG or something like that last year. So then you could swap him to the flex or to an AR. And then I believe the 2 ARs on this team are Geo and Paul X, if I remember correctly. So if you move Estriel or somebody to an AR, then you have Nero and Huke, which kind of are both really fast-paced players. And given the meta right now, it's so fast-paced. My God, it is so fast. But then it would be Huke, Nero, Estriel, and Geo. So I guess Nero would kind of get, or no, not Nero. So Paul X would be the odd one out. I can't think right now. So it'd be Nero, Huke, Geo, and Estriel as your team. Being top 7, would that work? Not sure. But Huke needs to go somewhere, right? He's too good to be in challengers right now. Miami Heretics are our next team. Currently sit top 6, 5-8 series count, 26-31 map count. Good enough for 80 CDL points. And actually got top 3 at the last major, which is great for them. However, could Huke go there? Most likely not. And the only reason I'm saying that is similar to the Falcons. They're a full, well, not Falcons, but Miami is a full Spanish squad. So then it would create a number of issues, you know, communication issues with that team. So highly unlikely that Heretics, you know, makes that move. But I guess it's possible, but most likely unlikely. And then kind of the one only other team that I guess could be a chance would be the Toronto Ultra. In this case, 7-4 map count or series count, 26-20 map count, 90 CDL points, good enough for 4th in the league right now. They've been doing well. They've actually been looking like one of our top teams. You know, could they see him as an upgrade over like Joe DeCeves? I mean, they have Kleenex there. Could they swap out him? I'm not sure. So, I mean, it's a very unlikely situation that they make a move for him, just given that they're already doing so well with their current roster. So, unless they really see, you know, one of their subs could really, you know, use by swapping out with Huke, then that's probably unlikely. And obviously, OpTic's out of there too. I know I skipped over them, but unlikely for them since they just brought they just brought Pred back. And then FaZe and Thieves, our top 2 teams in the game right now, are one of the top 2 teams in the game, you know, with Simp and Abizi, and then Envoy and Hydra. I just don't see either of those moves happening. So, you know, if I were to give kind of a good prediction, I mean, Surge has been the first team that's been like, hey, we dropped one of our players and we have an available spot. Could be that, but again, we'll see, right? Huke wants to win. He played very well on OpTic. Kind of sucks he's out of there, but still wish him the best of luck because he played amazing for us. But that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know down below, where do you think Huke's going to end up? Hopefully it hasn't been announced already, but let me know down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, guys, we'll see you in the next